What's up YouTube? This is John Helm with Helm, Woodshop, and Smithy back with another knife making video. I just got home from work. I happen to work in an operating room where it is freezing cold and you don't get to eat or drink water or use the restroom. So even though it's not really a physical job, by the time I get home I just feel tired and lethargic and I want to do nothing. So before we can get to work, I need to take care of that. So I'm gonna eat something light, get a little bit of exercise, then I should have some mental clarity. I should have my youthful vigor back, and then we'll get back in the shop and get to work. All right, that was a nice quick little workout. I'm tired, but I'm more energetic, if that makes any sense. Smithing can be pretty physical. It's not always, but it can be. So if you don't exercise, start exercising. It's good to do it anyway. And if you just get a couple kettlebells, you can get a great workout in 20-25 minutes. It'll tax you cardiovascularly, help you build up some strength. You're not gonna get super strong that way, but if you're a couch potato, you can definitely get a lot stronger than you are right now. Anyway, I'm back to regular John. Let's get in the workshop. On the last few episodes, y'all saw me go through the trials and tribulations of winding up with this sand mide billet. It has cable Damascus in the center, mild steel on the sides, and it appears to be a clean weld. So finally, we get to start making a knife. About damn time, right? So I was planning on making this into a hidden Tang knife with a welded on extension to the Tang because of the size of the billet, which you can see here on this template I drew up. But before I can go off and make this bad boy, I need to be able to make sure that I can file off perfectly square shoulders right here so that we have a tight fit up to the guard. And I don't have a filing guide, so that's what we're gonna be making today. So making a file guard should be a relatively easy and straightforward project. I'm just gonna start with this plate of 1095 steel that I had laying around from a previous project. And the reason I chose this plate rather than using a leaf spring or something that I have laying around that's already in a bar shape is because this is ground just about perfectly flat and it's already annealed, so I don't have to worry about drilling holes in it or being able to tap threads, which we're going to be doing. So all I'm going to do, cut out some little rectangles off of this. I'm going to stack them up, tack weld the edges together so that when we drill our holes, they're all perfectly lined up. Then we're going to grind the edges flat, cut off those welds. I'm going to have to drill some of the holes bigger on one side than the other so that the screws can pass easily through them. Then we'll have to tap the smaller holes on the opposite side so that they screw in. We'll also be drilling some holes for guideposts to make sure that they stay lined up. Then we're going to take the steel, heat treat it, temper it, and then it's just a matter of putting the thing together. Red Dicom. Smells toxic. So the lines I drew across this way, they look a little bit short. They're only about 3 1/4 inches. I think I want it to be wider than that, just in case I want to make a really broad blade later. So I cut it a little bit longer. It's 8 1/4. So we're going to mark it at 4 1/8. And that should leave me plenty of clearance to make big blades in the future. Cutting with the angle grinder always leaves these nasty edges on here. So I'm just going to take those off of the file real fast before I tack weld them together. I want to use the factory edges for the top of the filing guide where the file is going to be going across, because they're already perfectly straight, and as long as I keep them nice and flush, I won't have to modify them at all, which means that I'm going to have these nice 90-degree corners all the way around, and I won't have to fiddle with them on the belt grinder to get there. So I'm going to stack them like so, right up against the side. Clamp them in here, and then feel from the bottom to make sure that they're flush. If they're not, adjust, adjust. There we go. Now, it's not completely necessary to weld these together if you want to do this at home. You could stick them together with super glue, you could use carpet tape, you can use 2 pieces of masking tape with super glue in the middle. It doesn't really matter. As long as they're stuck together nice and even, it'll work. I just used a welder because I have it handy and it's fun. The automatic center punch sucks. Now I gotta punch holes like a poor person on the anvil.
Weak.
So for the locator pins, I have some 3/16 inch brass rod I'm going to use, just because it's small and it's the straightest thing that I have. This thing will probably be far from precise, but it'll work. Unfortunately, I only own one size of tap, and that is 8mm. It is probably not the ideal size for this project, but it'll work just fine. So if you look here, I have my guide holes drilled at 3/16 inches, but you can't stick a 3/16 inch rod into a 3/16 inch hole. I found a random drill bit. I have no idea where I got it, but it's the magical size for 3/16 inch rod. It is just loose enough that you can get it in there without a fight, and just tight enough that it never gets stuck. So what I want to do is drill through one of these pieces and just a little bit into the second piece with that drill bit, and that way I can get my rod to seat nice and tight in one half of it, and it'll slide in and out with a nice tight fit on the other side when we're putting it together. That way it'll keep our edge aligned, because where the screws go, you can't thread both sides and keep it super tight, so it'll have a little bit of give to it. There we are. You can see the little lip on the edge there where I'm going to taper down the end of the brass rod, and then I'm going to nail the tip and hammer it in nice and hard. That way it stays in place. For the locator pin holes, I wanted one to be just big enough for the pin to pass through without getting jammed. And then the other side, I want it to get in there and then get jammed so that it stays in place. But for the threaded holes, I need one of them to be large enough for the screw to pass through easily. And then I need the other one to be nice and tight so I can tap it and we can screw them together. Alright, I had to do some stuff off camera because my battery died again. I got a new camera, the battery lasts forever, but my wife also has a YouTube channel. She was filming yesterday and she neglected to put it back on the charger when she was done. So it looks like she just bought herself a week in solitary confinement. Alright, obviously I'm joking, but if you happen to be one of the many blacksmiths who is not only into metalworking but also into makeup, you should check out her channel. Or if you're a detective or you're really into mystery novels or something, you could watch her channel and help me figure out why a chick who is super smoking hot married a dude who looks like Wreck-It Ralph and is constantly covered in sweat and black shit. Before we move on, let's take a second and talk about what I did off camera. First, I drilled these holes out big and chamfered the edges so that these bolts can slide in and out easily. Then, I drilled these just a little bit deeper with a larger drill bit, but still not all the way through, so that the locator pins can seat in there. Later, I'll be tapering down these edges and hammering them in nice and hard so they don't move. Then I chamfered off these edges and drilled them out big enough so the locator pins can stick in there. Snug, but not too snug. I also ground the edges so that when the pins are in place, they're nice and flat and even, the lines are straight, and I chamfered the edges with the file real fast. And now the time has come to tap the screw holes. I hate doing this. It's such a pain. So now we can see how this thing works. We have one piece here, which can slide back and forth on the nuts, and we have another piece that is threaded, so it pulls them tighter together as you screw it in. You'll have a knife in the middle. These two pieces of steel will be hardened, so we'll have a nice hard edge to guide our file across. It'll cut through the soft steel of the blade prior to hardening, and it won't cut through this. Unless you use one of those Velour Bay Voltitan files I showed you on the last video, it'll cut it a little bit. It'll still cut through the softened steel way, way, way faster than it does the edge guide, and this will help you get a nice square shoulder on your Tang. Doesn't look promising. That's better. Woohoo! Looks good. On the first quench, I got the piece up to non-magnetic, quenched it. It wasn't quite hot enough in some of the places on the steel, so it wasn't fully hardened, and I did have to quench it again. But that's okay. Second quench went fine, no warps, everything is nice and straight. Skates a file. And keep in mind, this heat treat, the better it is, the better the piece is, but it doesn't have to be perfect like it does on a knife. The whole purpose of this is that it skates a file, so as long as it skates, we're good to go. I am going to temper them because the likelihood of me dropping this thing while I'm fiddling with it is pretty high, and I don't want it to shatter. That's what happened to my last one. That's why I don't have one right now. I left that one as hard as possible. I actually used 1095 and I did a water quench on it, and it was super hard, which is great for the application, but not so much for the durability. So I learned my lesson. I am going to differentially harden these though. I have a primary edge that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to temper the other edge back to purple, let that straw color creep up towards the top, and we should be good to go from there. So now I'm going to grind off all the scale and the burnt oil on here so that we can see our temper colors. Moses, the shop dog, he is my bestest friend. Scale is ground off. These are ready to temper. I'm going to put it in the leg vise here and keep the tip that I want hard in the leg vise for two reasons. One is we want that edge to be harder than the other. So since heat travels up, if I heat it down, it's going to take longer for those temper colors to get down to the bottom. The second reason it's in the big vise is because the metal in contact with it will act as a heat sink, and it's kind of like keeping it in water, but to a lesser extreme. Now that we have our temper colors, we're going to let it sit like this and just let that heat creep up towards the edge until the straw is just beneath it. And we have a beautiful differential temper. So I want these brass pins to form to the little socket that I drilled into the metal plate, so I'm going to anneal them first. And brass, you anneal just like you harden steel. Heat it up nice and hot, and then quench it. So this edge of the steel is still really, really hard, and I'm worried about cracking it while I hammer these in. So I'm going to do it on this block of wood in a vise rather than doing it on the anvil, and I'm going to do my striking with a wooden mallet. I'm hoping that the give that the wood has will be enough to stop it from cracking if I whack it a little bit too hard. I'm also going to take it nice and slow. I don't want to hit these hard because they are annealed. They could easily bend, and I need them to stay straight. So I'm just going to tap, 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 nice and light, until they're wedged in nice and tight, which obviously isn't yet. Well, shit, it already bent. Even with the wood on either side and using real light taps, it was still enough to bend this thing right out of the gate. So now I gotta punch it out and figure out something else. I rummaged around for a while and I found this piece of aluminum tubing. Now I know that aluminum tubing is obviously going to bend just as easily, if not easier, than that piece of annealed brass rod. However, these fit. The fit is actually much better than the brass rod. It's just about perfect. And I'm hoping that since it's a tube, that the edge will deform really quickly once I tap it in there. Also, I realized I don't need these locator pins to be nearly as long as I had them before. And having a shorter rod will definitely make it less likely to bend when I try to tap it in. So I'll give this another shot. If that doesn't work, I'm gonna have to go to the store and get some probably stainless steel 3/16 rod that I can just tap in there a little bit and then maybe weld it from the back or something. I don't know, we'll see. Wait a minute. I know what I'm gonna do. I have an idea. I'm gonna take a piece, I have some 3/8 inch thick steel. I'm gonna just take 2 little squares of that, drill a 3/16 inch hole in it, and then use those while I'm tapping it in to support the sides and stop it from bending. Well, 2/3 of blacksmithing isn't not making mistakes. It's figuring out how to fix your mistakes once you've already made them. Here we go. Keep your fingers crossed and hope for the best. Oh, that didn't do anything. I just hit myself in the finger with a mallet because I'm smart. That's what all the smart guys do. It looks like it worked. I have done it. There we go. The fit is a little bit tight, so I'm just going to touch on the inside of these holes with a file. Since that's the edge that has been tempered down a lot, shouldn't be an issue. I should be able to file it out so that we have a nice snug fit, but that you don't have to struggle to get it open and shut like it just did. So, I have here in my hand a working file guide. It skates a file on this side. It lines up reasonably well. It's a little bit of a pain to open and close because everything is a little bit tight and just a little bit too imprecise. But for my purposes, it is going to work just fine. What did I learn doing this? Well, A, have better tools. If I had a milling machine or something that was capable of drilling really, really precise holes, this would have been so much easier and the ending result would have been a lot better. It would operate nice and smoothly instead of being a little bit tight. But that's not really a problem. Once I get it on the knife, it should do exactly what I need it to do. Nevertheless, thank y'all for joining me today. If you have any methods that would work for making one of these better than what I used today, drop them in the comments below. Also, if you have any suggestions for future projects, I'd like to hear those too. If you enjoyed the song that I sang about my dog Moses earlier, you should check out my other YouTube channel, which is strangely still named Norseman Powerlifter, where I sing and play the guitar. Really, that is a thing. And like and subscribe. Y'all have a good one.